Hey, it's Lara here with your weekly Witchy Wednesday astrology forecast for the week of September 4th to 10th, 2019. I almost said 2018. We're not there anymore. Um, so this week I'm going to do just a one-part video again. Today's the first day of school here, so it's been busy, and I had a dentist appointment. Who books a dentist appointment on the first day of school? Me. So anyways, I have some other things to do, and I'm going to keep this to just one video today. But I think that's going to be enough to talk about what we want to talk about today. And we're going to, there's a lot going on in the sky, but it's all kind of related to this Virgo energy, right? That's going on. And we talked all about Virgo in last week's video when we addressed the new moon in Virgo. So if you didn't hear that video and it's just a one-parter, I really encourage you to go listen to that because it is relevant still, and will remain relevant. So and it's relevant for this video too. So we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to focus at the end of the video on Jupiter, and I'll explain why that is in a minute or two here. But before I do that, let's just go over where the moon is. So we're coming off that new moon in Virgo, right? But there is still a ton of Virgo energy playing out right now. But the moon itself has moved on, and the moon is currently in Scorpio as I'm recording this, the intense sign of Scorpio. Tonight it will shift into Sagittarius, which generally feels a bit lighter and more optimistic. And it will be in Sag until Saturday when it enters Capricorn. And we may be kind of hard at work doing some kind of project or something on the weekend with the moon in Capricorn, taking care of some responsibilities maybe. And then the moon moves into Aquarius on Tuesday. And then following that, we're going to have a full moon in Pisces. So I will speak to that full moon in Pisces in next week's video. But for today, I'm going to show you the chart right off the bat, and there's a reason for that. Normally I wait, right, a little bit. I do a bit of talking, and then I show you the chart, and then I talk some more. But I want to show you the chart right away because I think the visual is helpful in this instance. Okay, so you can see we still have all this energy in Virgo, right? Mars, the Sun, Mercury, and Venus are still there. Gradually, that energy later on in September will begin to shift sort of one by one into the sign of Libra, where we're moving towards the equinox, the fall equinox. But for now, still got a lot of Virgo energy. And if you recall last week when I was talking about Virgo, I told you that Virgo is mutable Earth, right? Virgo is a mutable Earth sign. And really, the core of Virgo is all about the rhythms of nature, the cycles of nature, right? Working with the cycles of the earth. So that's Virgo going on here. And the interesting thing that's happening is as each of these planets continue through the sign of Virgo, they're going to be making some significant conversations. They're going to be having some important conversations with other planets. And most notably, they're going to be trining. So a trine is a conversation of ease, flow, that kind of thing, right? Opportunity with the earth energy of Capricorn. So with Pluto, the South Node, and Saturn in Capricorn, actually in reverse order, the planets will be hitting first Saturn, then the South Node, then Pluto. As they move through Virgo, they're going to be making a trine one by one. And I'm going to break all this down for you in a second, but I want to point that out to you. And they are also going to be opposing Neptune in Pisces. And, one by one, they will cross over the 17-degree mark. And Neptune is at 17 degrees Pisces here. which is sitting exactly on my natal sun. So all these planets are also one by one opposing my natal sun as we go through this period. And then, and an opposition is a conversation of some tension, requiring some balance, balancing those two opposite sides, right? And an opposition takes place between two signs that are on the same axis. So Virgo and Pisces are opposite sides of the same coin, right? They're on the same axis. I call this kind of the axis of like practical magic, right? Other people refer to it as the axis of healing. Virgo more about sort of like the physical body and health, and then Pisces more about the spiritual health, right? So, but for me, it's very much about that sense of practical magic, doing that sacred service, right? That sacred work of Virgo, that hands-on work, and having a connection to something bigger than yourself, right? Pisces. So anyways, that's what's going on with this opposition. And that's not all. We also have all of these planets in Virgo. As they cross over 15 degrees Virgo, they are making an exact square to Jupiter in Sagittarius, another mutable sign, a fire sign, but also mutable, right? So adaptable, changeable, that kind of energy. And so these planets in Virgo, as you can see here, they're having a lot of important conversations over the next week or so. The next week and beyond, really, depending at what degree. Like Pluto is at 20 degrees, and so that'll be kind of the last hit. That trine to Pluto will be the last hit of all of those planets before they start to move into the end of Virgo and then into Libra. So, but all that is going on at once, and it's many areas of our chart are being triggered over this time. It's a really dynamic time, right? Many areas of our lives, because each house, right? We know each of these is an astrological house. Each house represents certain life themes or life areas. And so many houses are being triggered over these transits. But we get this sense, if we're really kind of paying attention, and we notice patterns and that kind of thing, that this is all somehow connected. So what does this mean overall? What's the big picture here for all of us? Because it's really difficult. Like, I can't in a video like this break down every single planet, every single aspect it's making. This would be hours and days long kind of thing. But overall, all of that energy, right, working together, those Virgo planets trining the planets in Capricorn, squaring Jupiter in Sagittarius, opposing Neptune in Pisces, right? One by one. So all those planets in Virgo operating under that Virgo influence of, just to refresh your memory, what Virgo is about, sacred service, devotion, dedication, purifying, efficiency, Virgo is the fixer, right? Striving for wholeness, looking for what's useful, separating the wheat from the chaff. Again, deeply, deeply connected to the cycles of nature. And on the shadow side, right, Virgo can be a little neurotic, can experience some anxiety, can be an overthinker, can be overly critical, prone to, rumination, like I said, overthinking. And, to the point that there's inaction, right? There's this paralysis that can happen if you're really operating on the extreme shadow side of Virgo, because it's like, if I can't get it perfect, I'm just not going to do it. Like, I just don't do it. That's like major procrastination can be the shadow side of Virgo. And that the underlying reason for that is because there's a fear of not getting it perfect. So if I can't get it perfect, I'm not going to do it at all. But that's the shadow side, right? Optimally, Virgo's about all those other things that I mentioned. So as these planets in Virgo, so Venus, Mars, Mercury, and the Sun, each trine all the energy in Capricorn, right? So as I mentioned, Saturn, the South Node, and Pluto. Capricorn is a fixed earth sign. It shares that earth quality in common with Virgo. So there is an opportunity to do real work, right? In the real world. Capricorn's very practical. It wants to make something materialize. It wants to be responsible. It wants to just keep putting its nose to the grindstone, keep climbing the mountain to reach the precipice, regardless, of what's kind of getting in the way. Really striving, really ambitious, but ultimately grounded in reality. So there's an opportunity here to do, some real grounded work to create something sustainable and practical, to create a real foundation, if you will. And this Capricorn energy, as you probably know, you've heard me talk about before, we've been experiencing this particular Capricorn energy with Saturn and Pluto coming closer and closer together in the sign of Capricorn, right? Culminating in January 2020. We've been experiencing this since about December 2017. So this is part of a bigger picture. So I feel like as these planets in Virgo trine the planets in Capricorn, we may get some evidence, maybe even the first real solid or material evidence, of what's been going on, of what we've been restructuring and trying to create and transform, and lay the foundations of in Capricorn, in the Capricorn area of our chart. So I've spoken about where Capricorn sits for each of us before, and I probably will do that again at some point before we hit the new year. So that's one piece. But the thing is, this isn't happening with sort of complete clarity, right? It's not like, now I see, now I see how all of this is falling into place and exactly where I'm headed and what this has all been about. We're not quite there yet, and that's largely because of the Neptune piece. So Neptune is this kind of veil over everything that we can't quite see clearly through. You think of like a sheer curtain, and it's like you can see through to the other side. It's translucent, but it's not transparent. And so you may see outlines, you may see shapes, but you may not have a clear picture of exactly what's on the other side of that curtain. Neptune is also, it can prevent us from seeing things clearly. It can have us kind of seeing things as we wish them to be, as we want them to be, rather than as they truly, really are. It can omit information, or have us kind of looking the other way, but it's also this energy of empathy and compassion and dreaminess and fantasy, and connection to a higher power, whatever that is for you. So Neptune opposing all of this energy can kind of go one of two ways, as I see it anyways, or maybe a bit of both, right? And that's sort of the way I've been experiencing it. So it can draw our attention to where we can make our dreams, if they're realistic, right? All this earth energy, Capricorn, Virgo, if they're realistic and grounded in reality, where we can make those dreams come to fruition, really. And maybe where we have not been seeing things clearly, maybe where we have missed information, or we have been confused or deceived even, or deceiving ourselves, or trying to escape the reality, and living in a bit of a fantasy world. Or it can feel like we're searching, right, for what is true, what is real. I can't, is that real? Is that real? Is that the truth? Is this the truth? What's authentic? And we just can't sort of put our finger on it just yet. We still don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, right, in place, all the information that we need. And that can be a bit frustrating to people who really like to know, and they don't like the uncertainty kind of thing. And then there's this square to Jupiter, which also involves Neptune. So this just gets, more and more complicated, curiouser and curiouser kind of thing, right? So this square, there is a looming square between Jupiter and Neptune that will be exact for the third time this year in, I think it's September 21st, so this month, later this month. And so this is part of a bigger ongoing story that's been happening over the course of the year too. Jupiter and Neptune coming into square, separating, coming into square a second time, separating, and now coming into square a third and final time, right? So this is like another piece of the puzzle, an added layer of complexity. And I'll speak in more detail about that, like that specific conversation, the square between Neptune and Jupiter, when it comes closer to the end of September. But what I'm going to focus on for each sign this week is Jupiter's placement, right, in the chart, and the square to the Virgo energy. But keeping in mind, Neptune is also there playing a role in all of this. So the key to working with this energy, as I see it, is to do what you can do, to take practical steps, keep putting one foot in front of the other, right? To take real world action, hands-on, hands-on deck kind of thing, in true Virgo fashion. And really to don't have unrealistic expectations of yourself, of others. And don't let your fear or your anxiety of sort of not getting it right or perfect stop you from taking action, right? A square is a conversation of tension where something's got to give. And in order to resolve the tension, we must take action. And if we don't take action, we can either end up sort of imploding, right? The tension goes inward and we become a stress case, and we may make ourselves physically ill, mentally ill, those kinds of things. Or the universe will force our hand by presenting something that we cannot ignore, that we must take action on. So that's how that works. So optimally, when we're talking about all of, these conversations, and how we work with the energy is to be aware, which is why you're watching this video, right? And to work proactively instead of reactively with the energy, right? So, and to respond rather than react if things come up. So the other thing I want to say is if you're in that mode of like, I'm confused, I don't know what step to take next, I don't know what to check off the list next, I don't know if I have all the information, I don't know if this is the truth or this is the truth, these kinds of things, allow your sort of intuitive guidance system to lead the way, right? That axis of Pisces Virgo is very, very, very intuitive, because Pisces is connected to the unseen, to, messages that maybe can't be explained or don't come through in what we would think of as traditional ways. It's about that being a super feeler and very empathic and very sensitive to energies and intuitive, that sort of thing. But Virgo is also very intuitive, but it's like the wisdom of the body, right? The wisdom connected to the earth and the cycles of the earth and nature. And that is a very powerful form of intuition. And when you put those two things together, that's like a major superpower. So, follow your inner guidance and allow it to create that practical magic. And even if you aren't sure what the end result will be, just keep on keeping on, sort of thing. Keep the bigger picture and the bigger vision, and the dream in mind, but try not to get overly attached to the specifics in terms of, it has to happen exactly like this and exactly at this time and exactly in this way, that sort of thing. Make room for adjustments, right? Virgo is mutable energy, ultimately. It's adaptable, it's transitional, it's changeable. So allow for that and allow for changes and new information. And just trust that bit by bit, we are getting somewhere very real. We just might not know exactly where that is just yet. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of different areas being triggered at this time. But what I've chosen to do in this video is to really focus, as I go through each of the signs, on the Jupiter piece. And the reason for that is I thought it was timely. Like, I was looking at the chart and I was a bit overwhelmed, to be truthful with you, thinking like, oh my gosh, what am I going to focus on this week? There's so much going on, right? But Jupiter kept jumping out at me and kept like going, me over here, talk about me. So I trusted that. And partly because, as I said, it's approaching this last square to Neptune coming up at the end of the month. It's been in its home sign of Sagittarius since November 2018, but it's moving on in December of this year, right? So we're kind of in that last phase. We are in the home stretch in terms of Jupiter. Jupiter's traveling through Sagittarius and what that means for each of us. So, and on that subject, Jupiter has been expanding and growing a particular area of our chart. Because that's what Jupiter signifies: expansion, growth, optimism, the big picture, our worldview, this kind of thing, seeking meaning. So it's been asking us to expand our consciousness, to seek meaning and truth, to learn to grow, and specifically in the area of the chart that Sagittarius sits for us, right? Whatever house that's in for us. And it may have brought us some good fortune, or it may have had us kind of overreaching, right? Being overly optimistic, potentially experiencing too much of a good thing, because Jupiter doesn't really know when to quit. And too much expansion is not a good thing. Too much growth is not a good thing. Too much growth too quickly is not a good thing. And as maybe shitty of an example it might be, I think of Jupiter, the shadow side of Jupiter, as almost being, I always get the analogy of a cancer cell. So cancer cells don't get the message that it's time to stop growing, and they just keep multiplying and multiplying and multiplying out of control, right? And that's not good, obviously, in the end. So Jupiter, can be a bit like that. It kind of needs to learn to put the brakes on sometimes. It can also be a bit of a overpromiser. It can sometimes have the tendency of overpromising and under delivering. It always brings us some kinds of gifts, right? Ultimately, there is a gift. It is benefic, but they don't necessarily always match sort of the grand vision that we might have had. But it's up to us ultimately to accept whatever gifts that Jupiter has offered us. And even though if they may not have come in form that we were hoping or expecting, and to kind of accept those gifts with gratitude, and to realize that sometimes not getting what we wished for is actually a blessing in disguise. So we're at this kind of checkpoint right now, this final checkpoint of Jupiter with all these planets in Virgo squaring. And so ultimately, we look at where Jupiter's energy is hitting your chart, right? So where is Sagittarius for each of you until December of this year when it moves on. And so this checkpoint is kind of a message saying, okay, it's time to ask yourself, how far do you want to take this, right? How much is too much? Are you seeing the truth accurately, or are you looking at things through rose-colored glasses, too much kind of thing, and seeing what you want to be true rather than what is actually true? Are you expecting too much too fast without kind of having to do the work and put in the hours and do that, sacred service work of Virgo? And, the other thing is, it's like, do you need, like on the opposite side, it can be, do you need to have a broader vision? Like, has your vision not been broad enough, kind of thing? Do you need to shift your perspective, to alter your beliefs, to re-examine your convictions, to be willing to learn something new, right? Or maybe even to be more optimistic in a certain area of your life. So whatever the case may be, as you ponder those questions and figure out, how those apply to you, and oftentimes it's not one side or the other, it's a bit of both. But now's the time to make the necessary adjustments, right? In whatever area of that life that Jupiter is sitting for you before Jupiter moves on into Capricorn. So having said that, let's launch into going through each of the signs, and I will remind you that we are speaking first and foremost to rising signs, right? And so if you know your rising sign, then please do listen to that. But also you can listen for your sun sign and your moon sign as well. And they give you added layers of information. And I don't think I mentioned that, if you want more insight into your own chart and, perhaps what's coming up for you, or, these kinds of things, and you can always get a reading with me, and you can do that at the link below to my website. If you have any questions, please do reach out, okay? So I want to say before I launch in that if you want to know what house this is squaring specifically over this time, listen to last week's video about Virgo, because I speak to where Virgo's sitting for each of the signs. I don't really have time to go through that again in this video, but this Jupiter in Sagittarius, right, is squaring all those planets in Virgo. So 90-degree angle. And again, that's Venus, Mars, Mercury, and the Sun. And the moon also, but the moon has moved on, right? So that's where the square is happening. But specifically here, we're going to talk about Jupiter, where it's sitting, and considering, those questions that I posed to you just before I got to this part. So hopefully you listen to the intro and you don't just jump to your sign, because that's usually very important. All right, let's begin with Sagittarius, because Jupiter's been moving through your sign since November, right, of 2018. So Jupiter has been growing, expanding, asking you to shift your perspective, to learn something new, to alter your vision, to broaden your vision, maybe bringing you lots, maybe too much of a good thing in some cases, right? In terms of your physical body, your vitality, your instinctual approach to the world, right? How you present yourself, how you just instinctually kind of react to things. This is about your journey through this physical life in this physical body kind of thing. And so on a very kind of real world level, this could be Jupiter expanding. I'm going to use an example of my son. Hopefully he doesn't mind, but he's had like massive growth spurt. He's a double Sag. Well, he's a Leo sun, but he's a Sag rising and a Sag moon. So lots of Sagittarius energy, and he's just like shot up. It's unbelievable how tall and broad he has gotten over the course of this Jupiter transit, actually. So that's kind of, very literal one way that this can play out. But, in another sense, it may be you, really kind of growing, shifting, changing, learning about how you present yourself. Changing something or growing something or expanding something regarding your physical appearance and your physical body even. So that's just giving you a couple of examples of how that can look. But now is the time, as I said, Sag, for those kind of questions of adjustment at this point, right? So we're going to move on to Scorpio now, where we've got Jupiter sitting in your second house. So Scorpio, this has been a kind of growth, expansion, broadening your horizons, learning a lot, maybe growing, even too fast, like that you can't keep up sort of thing. Re-examining your beliefs, your convictions, all of those things I mentioned in the intro, just before I got to this part. In relation to your personal resources, right? So like your money, the money you make from your work, your skills and talents, your material possessions, what you value, your self-worth, how you kind of feel secure in the world, right? How you get your needs met. And so Jupiter has been moving through the second house for you. And there's no doubt been lots of growth and expansion. And some of it may be very beneficial, and some of it may be a little out of control and hard to manage and needs to be reined in or adjusted, this kind of thing, right? So that's what's been going on for you, Scorpio. And it's kind of time to ask yourself, some of those questions that I posed earlier. So make sure to listen to the intro. Moving on to Libra now, we've got Jupiter transiting your third house. So Libra, for you, this has been about all those, Jupiterian themes of growth and expansion and potentially optimism of, broad vision of shifting your perspective, of learning something new, potentially even of travel. Jupiter can have to do with that as well. But in relation to communications, right? Your daily communications, and your immediate environment. So your peers, your siblings, your cousins, your neighbors, your community members. So Jupiter is there, like this area of life is somehow really kind of growing, expanding outward in some way. And maybe some of that's been really good and some of it's been like, whoa, 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 we need to rein it in, right? And so it's up to you. Only you will know what the case is for you personally. And so have a listen to some of those questions that I pose and apply them to your own life and situation and see where, the adjustments, if any, need to be kind of made at this time before Jupiter moves on. So we're going to move on to Virgo now, where we have Jupiter sitting in your fourth house, Virgo. So the fourth house has to do with our home and our family and our foundations and our roots and our ancestry and our literal physical place of living. Can even have to do with real estate, can have to do with, our ancestral lineage, our connection to mother figures, that kind of thing. So this area of life for you, Virgo, has been no doubt growing, expanding, widening. There may have been, you may have sort of like a bigger vision for all of this. You may be learning new things in regards to this. Shifting your perspective, all these Jupiterian themes. And so it, like on a very literal level, this could be, expanding your place of living, putting an addition on your house, or moving, or, just a lot of stuff going on at home. I'm a Virgo rising. This has very much been the case for me. So much going on the home front. And sometimes to the point of it needs to be reined in, right? We need to put some boundaries, some Saturnian boundaries there, because it just sometimes gets out of control. So, Virgo, time to kind of make the adjustments and see where things are at and what needs to be tweaked, right now, as far as those things go. So I'm going to move on to Leo now, where we have Jupiter sitting in the fifth house of your creative self-expression, of your inner child, and what sparks joy for you, and also your children or children that you're associated with. So, Leo, this area of life has been really ballooning, let's say, excuse me, right? Growing, expanding. There's been lots going on with regards to these things in your life. And sometimes so much so that it's hard to keep up, right? It needs maybe sometimes to be reined in a bit. But all those questions about, are you seeing the truth accurately, or are you seeing what you want to see in this area? Are you expecting too much too fast? Do you need to have a broader vision? Do you need to be more optimistic? Are you willing to learn something new when it comes to these things? Do you need to re-examine your convictions and your beliefs? All of these things that I asked, this applies to your fifth house. So that's what you want to think about over this time and make the necessary adjustments, Leo. Okay, we're going to move on to Cancer now. And Cancer, we've got Jupiter sitting in your sixth house since November 2018 and remaining there until early December of this year. So this is the time now, right? We're in the home stretch to ask yourself, perhaps, how have things been growing and expanding in this sixth house area of the daily grind, of the day-to-day tasks that you do, whether they be paid or unpaid, of how you are in service to others? Are things out of balance there? This has to do with your routines, including your routines around health, wellness, self-development, this kind of thing. So Cancer, all those questions that I posed in relation to Jupiter, Jupiterian energy in Sag, apply to the sixth house for you. And so this is where you want to put your focus and see where any necessary adjustments need to be made one way or the other, right? Whether things need to be reined in a bit, whether things need to be expanded a bit. Perspectives need to shift. You need to be willing to learn something new, to switch it up, to see things as they are rather than as you want them to be. Are you, has it just been kind of work, 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 work kind of thing all the time, Cancer, and you need to rein that in? That's a possibility, but only you will know that. So I'm going to move on now to Gemini, where we've got Jupiter sitting in your 7th house. So you've had a lot of growth, expansion, focus on philosophies, beliefs, perspectives, convictions, being asked perhaps to learn something new, seeking meaning and truth in regards to your one-to-one relationships, your closest personal relationships, whether that be a significant other, close family members, friends, these kinds of things, even people you may consider rivals. So there has been lots going on with regards to that for you, since Jupiter entered Sagittarius in November 2018. And at this point in time, Gemini, you're asked to kind of examine that area of life and see where adjustments need to be made, or where maybe, you're looking a gift horse in the mouth, or maybe where there have been blessings in disguise. Maybe things haven't worked out quite the way you wanted them to, but maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing. So that's for you, Gemini. Moving on to Taurus now, where we have Jupiter in your 8th house, Taurus. So Jupiter has been teaching you a lot, growing, expanding this 8th house area, which has to do with your intimate relationships, your deep psyche, the resources that you share with other people, other organizations, other entities. So, and that can be money. It can also be time and energy, right? As well. Those are resources as well. So, there's definitely been some activity going on for you in this area of the chart. And now's a time to make some adjustments, to examine where you're at and how far you've come, and where you, what's the bigger picture and where are you headed, and those kinds of things. So have a listen to the questions that I posed in the intro just before I got to this piece, and consider those for yourself, Taurus. Moving on to Aries now, we have Jupiter in the 9th house for you, Aries. And so Jupiter is actually at home in the 9th house. And so this 9th house area of teaching, learning, philosophies, belief systems, worldview, long distance travel, our connection to foreign cultures, all of this has been growing, expanding, wanting to teach you something, in general, in this area, this 9th house area. And so it's time now to take a closer look at that and what's been going on for you, and where adjustments need to be made, and maybe having gratitude for some of the things that have, been gifted to you, or where perhaps you haven't recognized the gifts, or that kind of thing. So that's for you, Aries. And I'll move on to Pisces now, where we have Jupiter in your 10th house, Pisces. So this is the house of career, of your worldly ambitions, of your public reputation, of your relationship to authority. Ultimately, I see it as the house of the legacy you wish to leave. And so Pisces, lots has been going on in this department for you since November 2018. Lots of growth and expansion, and vision, and this kind of thing. And so now it is time to ask yourself some of those questions that I posed earlier in the intro, and see where some adjustments may need to be made here as Jupiter transits the last part of Sagittarius and gets ready to move on. That's for you. And moving on to Aquarius. Aquarius, we've had Jupiter in your 11th house since November 2018, growing, expanding, teaching you, and, asking you to kind of seek the truth in terms of your hopes and dreams for the future, your tribe, the people you're walking, who are walking the same path as you, organizations, groups, friendships, these kinds of things, right? What's been going on in that department for you, Aquarius? It's time to kind of reevaluate, to ask yourself some questions, to see where, if any, adjustments need to be made there. So that's for you, Aquarius. And then last but not least, we have Capricorn, where Jupiter's been sitting in your 12th house since November 2018. And Capricorn, we know you've had a lot going on with, you know, the Pluto Saturn stuff going on in your sign. And this is kind of like it's the spiritual piece to that. All of this stuff heavy stuff that you may be experiencing, it's got a deeper meaning to it that maybe people are not seeing, because the 12th house is what's behind closed doors. So your spiritual life may be expanding and growing in some way. You know, and so ask yourself the questions that I posed in relation to the 12th house, you know, of the unseen, of what goes on behind closed doors, of how you spend time in rest and solitude, of your connection to the divine, and see what comes up for you. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for being here with me, and I will see you all next week, okay? Take good care, everyone. Bye-bye.